Okay, so you want to buy a petrol station. Most people think they are buying a fuel business. They are not. The fuel is not the product. The fuel is the reason a stranger stops their car, gets out, walks past a coffee machine, a fridge, a bakery counter, and a wall of things they did not intend to buy. You are not selling petrol, you are selling a doorway, and the petrol is what you pay to keep it open. Let us start with what it costs to get in. A forecourt is not a shop with pumps outside. It is a fuel depot with a shop attached, and the depot is the expensive part. Underground storage tanks, pumps, vapor recovery systems, interceptors that stop spilled fuel reaching the drains, fire suppression, canopy, lighting rated for an explosive atmosphere. A modern petrol station is, legally and structurally, a small piece of hazardous infrastructure that happens to sell sandwiches. Building one from scratch, in a developed country, with the land, the tanks, the forecourt, and the shop, can run well into the millions. Buying an existing one is usually cheaper, and the price depends almost entirely on one number that has nothing to do with fuel, footfall, because the person selling it to you knows exactly what you are about to learn. Now, the number that catches everyone. You would assume that the money in a petrol station is in the petrol. It is in the name. It is on the giant illuminated sign. It is the reason the whole site exists. It is also almost none of the profit. Look at what actually happens when someone spends £70 filling a car. A very large share of that number is tax. In the United Kingdom, fuel duty alone runs to more than 50 pence on every single liter, and then value-added tax is charged on top of the whole thing, including on the duty. Tax on a tax. Then there is the fuel itself, which the retailer bought at wholesale, at a price set on international markets by people who have never heard of your forecourt. What is left for the person who owns the pumps is, historically, a handful of pence per liter, sometimes a little more. Sometimes, when wholesale prices move faster than pump prices, nothing at all. So a customer fills an entire tank, hands over £70, and the owner of the petrol station keeps roughly the price of a sandwich. That is the business you thought you were buying. Now watch what happens next, because it is worse. That £70 transaction almost certainly went through a card machine, and the card fee is charged on the whole £70. Read that again. You pay a percentage on a number that is mostly government tax and wholesale fuel cost. You are paying processing fees on money that was never yours. On a low-margin fuel sale, card fees alone can eat a genuinely painful share of what little you made. There are forecourt operators who will tell you, without exaggeration, that on some transactions the card processor made more than they did. Then add the rest, the tanker delivery you paid for before you sold a drop of it. Tens of thousands of liters at a time, tens of thousands of pounds at a time, sitting in the ground as inventory while the market price moves against you. 24-hour staffing, electricity for a canopy that never goes dark, insurance on a site storing tens of thousands of liters of flammable liquid. The fuel side of a petrol station is a high-volume, high-risk, high-tax, low-margin operation. It is not the business. It is the bait. So where is the money? It is 8 meters away, behind a glass door, under fluorescent light. The shop, on a bottle of water, a bag of crisps, a meal deal, a bar of chocolate. The margins are not measured in pence per liter. They are measured in tens of percent. And on the single most important product on the entire site, they are extraordinary. Coffee. A cup of coffee from a forecourt machine might sell for £2.50. The beans, the milk, the cup, the lid, the actual cost of the thing in your hand is a fraction of that. The margin on one cup of coffee can rival the margin on an entire tank of fuel, which means the true structure of the business is this. You operate a hazardous fuel depot at almost no profit in order to persuade a driver to leave their vehicle, walk across your forecourt, and buy a coffee. The pumps are customer acquisition. The shop is the business, and every good operator in the world knows it, which is why the modern forecourt has slowly stopped looking like a garage and started looking like a small supermarket with a bakery, a chiller, a food-to-go counter, and a car wash that generates more margin per square meter than anything else on the site. Now, the enemy. If the shop is where the money is, then whoever brings the most people to the shop wins. And there is one competitor built specifically to do that, and it is not another garage. It is a supermarket. A supermarket forecourt does not need to make money on fuel. It does not really need to make money on the forecourt at all. Cheap fuel is a loss leader, a way of pulling a car into the car park, where the driver will then spend £100 inside on a weekly shop. The supermarket is not competing with you on fuel. It is using fuel as an advertisement for something you do not sell. So it prices below what an independent forecourt can survive on, and it does this permanently, and it does not care. This is a large part of why the industry looks the way it does today. In 1970, the United Kingdom had somewhere in the region of 37,000 petrol stations. Today, the figure is closer to 8 or 9,000. Roughly 3/4 of them are gone. And here is the part that should stop you. It did not happen because people stopped driving. There are more cars on British roads now than there were then. They closed because the fuel stopped paying, and only the sites that became something other than a fuel business survived. Which brings us to the man who understood that earlier and more completely than almost anyone. In 1982, a young man in Texas named Arch Applin opened a small convenience store. The company he built, Buc-ee's, is now known for enormous sites with more than 100 fuel pumps. And almost nobody talks about the fuel. They talk about the bathrooms. Buc-ee's became famous, genuinely famous, for having spotlessly clean toilets, then for its brisket, then for its jerky counter, its fudge, its wall of merchandise, and stores so large they contain more retail floor space than a supermarket. The fuel is priced to be competitive. The fuel is not the point. The fuel is the reason a family on a long drive chooses to stop at your building rather than the one 3 miles further on. And once they are inside a building that size, hungry, tired, and standing in front of a brisket counter, the transaction is no longer about petrol at all. He did not build a better petrol station. He built a destination and then attached pumps to it. That is the whole lesson of this industry, delivered by a man who worked it out in a small Texas shop 4 decades ago. Nobody drives out of their way for cheaper fuel. They will drive out of their way for a clean toilet and a sandwich they actually want. Now the part that is buried, and it is buried in the most literal sense. Beneath the tarmac, you are standing on site the storage tanks. Tens of thousands of liters of fuel, held in steel under the ground for decades. Steel corrodes. If a tank leaks, or a pipe joint, or a fitting, the fuel does not simply disappear. It enters the soil. It can reach groundwater, and at that point, you are no longer running a shop. You are running an environmental remediation project on land you happen to own. Investigation, excavation, soil removal, monitoring wells, regulators, consultants, lawyers. Remediation costs on a contaminated forecourt can run to hundreds of thousands, and in bad cases far beyond. And even if nothing ever leaks, the tanks still have to come out eventually. Decommissioning a forecourt, removing the tanks, cleaning the ground, certifying the site, is itself a substantial bill. So here is the structural truth underneath this entire asset. You can walk away from most failing businesses. You hand back the keys, you sell the fixtures, you are done. You cannot walk away from what is underneath a petrol station. The tank does not care that trade has been poor. The tank does not care that you are selling. It sits in the ground, aging, and one day it becomes a bill. And that bill arrives whether or not you ever made a single pound on the site, which raises the obvious question about the next 30 years. Electric vehicles do not need your pumps. But look closely at what a charger actually changes. Refueling takes 5 minutes. Charging takes 20, 30, sometimes longer. That is not a threat to the shop. That is a gift to the shop. A driver who must stay on your site for half an hour is a driver who will buy a coffee, a sandwich, and something they did not plan to. The forecourt of the future may sell no fuel at all and still work, provided the owner understood from the beginning that the fuel was never the business. The problem is the transition. Chargers are expensive. Grid connections are slow. And in the meantime, you still own the tanks. So let us close it out. If you do decide to buy a petrol station, understand what you are actually buying. You are not buying a fuel business. The fuel is a heavily taxed, low-margin, high-risk courtesy you extend to strangers so that they will come inside. You are buying a shop with a very dangerous car park, a very small margin, and a liability buried under the tarmac that will outlast every customer you ever serve. And it is still there when the pumps come out.